Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and lore. And today I'm going to talk about a CIA document titled Mars Exploration. It's sitting right in CIA's library, and all it says is Mars Exploration. So I was looking up different documents on this page, Remote Viewing Community Magazine. And there's an article written by Mark Hodgetts, and it's titled Remote Viewing a Rabbit Hole on Mars. And like I talk about in most of my podcasts, we go down the rabbit hole all the time on these podcasts. And it's interesting to see how other researchers, react to finding these documents on the CIA's website, like this guy did. So he's just like me. He's going through the files, and he sees a document, just states Mars exploration. It's so strange, it doesn't have a lot of detail, doesn't have much of anything. So I go ahead and read this article, and basically it suggests and it states that the government was interested in finding out more about Mars, more about what happened 1 million years ago on Mars, and whether or not there was a civilization on Mars. And so this guy, Mr. Hodgetts, continues to write about it, and he actually gives us a link to the FBI document. And if you go to it, you can click right to it. It has the Mars exploration document link, as well as the coordinate remote viewing CIA document link. And that's really just talking about remote viewing and how to do it. But the Mars exploration link is right here, and you click on it, and it's 9 pages long. And I started to read it, and I thought to myself, God, this sounds really familiar. A remote viewing that they state they did on the subject of Mars. The time of interest is approximately 1 million years BC, so before Christ. So I guess you got to tack on 2,000 years to what I stated. 1 million plus 2,020 to find out what was going on Mars, whether there was a civilization, and what happened to them. And this is not words coming out of my mouth. I mean, you can click right on it, man. I mean, it's right here, and it's in the CIA archives. So what they did was they tasked a monitor and a remote viewer to look at this topic, and what they found is that the individual who was the remote viewer had no idea what he was remote viewing. He's just given coordinates and told to describe what is at those coordinates. And what he stated was that he saw triangular pyramids. He stated that he found other buildings and a civilization there. Now, when he started to talk about what he saw, he stated that it was a lot of raw data, that it was kind of like breaking up at first. It was like very fragmented pieces. But I guess when you're going back a million years, remote viewing, things can get a little bit jumbled in time. But that's the fascinating thing, is that when we talk about remote viewers, we talk about their capabilities of seeing things on Earth from different locations, from far away locations. Remote viewing from like Chicago to Russia. But we rarely talk about remote viewing in time, going backwards and forwards in time. And so that's what's really fascinating. And what I'm doing is I'm going through the article, and I'm looking at what he's saying, and it hit me. I've read this story before. This story, the remote viewer in this case, they don't state his name. I know who it is. It's Joseph McMoneagle, who's written many remote viewing stories or books about uh, his time in the remote viewing program, Stargate. So in this document, the remote viewer, Joe, talks about seeing very large people. He states that they appear thin and tall, but they're very large. So I don't know what very large is, if that's 7 feet or 10 feet, but they're wearing some kind of strange clothing. He states that he sees a lot of structures with huge sections of very smooth stone. He states that in these caverns and canyons that they're really huge. He states that he didn't feel like they were small at all. The perception was that the ceiling was very high and the walls were very wide. So for the people that he's describing, the individuals that he was describing, would require large buildings to walk around in. They give him new coordinates in this document. This document is basically the entire rundown of the remote viewing session. So this document is just a session, and it has the remote viewers reply to the monitor's questions about the environment that this individual is remote viewing. So they give him new coordinates, and he moves. They tell him to move to the new coordinates, and he states that he feels like he's at the end of a large road. There's a marker that's very large that keeps getting larger, and he feels like it's similar to the Washington Monument, like an obelisk. And so on Mars, 1 million years ago, they had something similar to the Washington Monument, that very tall structure that they have with the pool. You've seen it in Forrest Gump and all kinds of pictures at Washington. So then they give him new coordinates, and he moves around, and he sees some mountains, very ragged mountains and cliffs. They give him other coordinates. I don't know if they know that there's certain items of interest at these coordinates, or if they're just giving him coordinates just to check around and see if there is anything strange there. But at some coordinates he doesn't really see anything, and other coordinates he finds fascinating things. So moving forward, it states that he's able to perceive a bunch of roads that are intersecting, and that the channels that they're cut into are very neatly cut, and they're very deep. So, I mean, this is 1 million years ago we're talking about. So, like, if we're ever looking at like the rover images or any other images that we're able to get from like Hubble or something like that, the roads that they had are probably long gone, or well, covered up by NASA, one of the two. So that's not really surprising that their roads and a lot of their structures are basically gone, because it states that Joe was able to converse with these individuals, or at least one of the individuals, at this targeted location 1 million years ago. So let me repeat that. Joe, the remote viewer, was able to communicate with one of these individuals 1 million years ago, and talk with him a little bit about their culture and their civilization. And the monitor asks him, well, what does the individual think of you? And Joe states that the individual on Mars thought he was kind of more of a figment of his imagination, or a hallucination type of thing. Which is interesting, because if they were a highly evolved civilization, you would think that they would have telepathic and other psi capabilities, and would know what he is. But maybe 1 million years ago they didn't have that capability. I'm not sure. So they target him towards a shelter where they're sheltering from storms that were happening on their planet. Apparently there was some sort of geological storm that demolished the planet, at least the planet's surface. And it states that these individuals went underground and were in shelters, and were sheltering in from a savage storm and sleeping through storms. And so that's the input that Joe was getting about these individuals and what they were going through. And it states that they're an ancient people, according to what Joe's getting. He's stating that they were dying, that it was past their age and time. And so he stated that they were very philosophical about it, that they were looking for a way to survive. Daddy. So they basically sent some of their people out on a mission to find another place to live. It stated that they were trying to figure out a way to get off the planet, very rapidly, and the group went somewhere, he stated, like a long way away to find another place to live. And yeah, that's kind of where he's at with this particular time portion. He's going into the portion where he's talking to the individual, and it basically states that he feels like he's a hallucination of some sort. And when they left, these individuals eventually left the sheltered location that they were getting on a ship. And the impression that Joe got was that this ship was more like a hovering boat, that had very rounded walls and shiny metal, and that's kind of what the ship looked like. And he was tasked to go along on the journey. And the impression that Joe got from where this civilization went to was that it was a totally different planet, a very crazy place with volcanoes, gas pockets, strange plants, volatile environment. However, it had more vegetation than Mars did, and that it looked like hopefully it would be a better place to live. But it seems strange that given Earth's proximity to Mars, the Martians wouldn't just come to Earth. Why wouldn't they just come to Earth? I mean, we were here a million years ago. I mean, we've been here for millions and millions of years. I mean, we had dinosaurs here 65 million years ago. So Earth has been here for a long, long time. Why did the Martians not come here? Or did Joe not read into them coming here? Maybe they did come here, but they came to, a portion that was very volcanic for some reason or another. I find that kind of hard to believe, though. It must have been that they went somewhere else, and maybe Earth was protected somehow by another species. A lot of stories that revolve around like government whistleblowers is that there's like a protective barrier to Earth for certain species, and they can't come here. So it could have been that the Martians just weren't allowed to come here, or the aliens that were, taking over Earth or protecting Earth with their protective barrier just thought that the Martians were some sort of, destructive species and they didn't want them to come here. Who knows? I don't know. But, there's lots of possibilities out there. And if you have a scientific fiction, science fiction mind like I do, you can think up all kinds of things. So that's the end of the session. They finished the session by bringing Joe back, and they state that the monitor tells him to come back to the sound of his voice into the present time right now to the 22nd of May 1984, and to continue to follow him back into the room to the sound of his voice to the 22nd of May 1984. So that's the date in which they did this tasking and this experiment. So super interesting stuff. 1 million BC, Mars had a civilization that was crumbling, and they were tasked to get off of the planet because it was dying. And the reason they said that the planet was dying was a little confusing. They did task him to find out why the planet was dying, and it was a lot of raw data that he was getting in the remote viewing session. But they stated that the globe was going through a comet's tail, or some sort of cosmic event caused the destruction of Mars. So maybe, at the time, maybe Earth wasn't the ideal place to go anyway. Maybe Earth was going, undergoing some damage or some shots from this cosmic event. So, super interesting document. It's a legit document. It's on the CIA website. You guys, take a look at this stuff. I mean, nobody can deny this anymore, I mean, the CIA is willing to show it to us, They're like, hey, man, here it is. Here's the info. You want to check it out. Boom. We're not going to put it out into you don't see it in the social or the mass media. You don't see it in, the mainstream media at all, but it's here. If you want to look at it and you want some verification, I mean, they're giving it to us. It's just they're not going to put it on the 5 o'clock news. But I'll give it to you. So anyway, thanks for enjoying, or thanks for accompanying me on this journey. I love reading this stuff, and I love reading it with you guys. So hopefully you're enjoying it. Anyway, that being said, hopefully you're staying healthy and taking care of yourself and following your passions. Until next time, Lockdown Universe out.